Viewer discretion advised.
I miss my brother so much.
How did his death affect the group?
It was very dark.
Paul Gray spent years hiding in plain sight. While other Slipknot members were high on some power trip and fought for attention, he stood on the side, playing bass, and most people barely noticed him at all.
I don't really consider myself a rock star, but obviously I guess I am. I don't know, and
Then in 2010, with Slipknot bigger than ever and his first child on the way, Paul was found dead in a hotel room.
The bassist for the band Slipknot has died.
He was found dead in an Urbandale
And his death finally exposed the truth. He was one of the main reasons Slipknot existed at all.
He really was the essence of Slipknot.
This is the story of Paul Gray. Paul Dedrick Gray was born in Los Angeles on April 8, 1972. His childhood quickly turned to shit when his father took his own life and the family was left struggling both emotionally and financially.
His mom, I guess she was using and single mom.
His mother worked several jobs and they ping-ponged across Southern California chasing any opportunity that opened up, but money remained tight. Music was the one thing Paul could take with him. Like many of us, he loved bands like Black Sabbath, Kiss, and Metallica. Their records gave him a career plan, although not a particularly practical one for a broke teenager. So he begged his mother for a guitar until she found enough money to buy one.
yeah, I started off playing guitar, and I switched to bass later,
But lessons were still too expensive, so Paul spent hours with his records, picking apart the songs and figuring out how to copy those riffs.
That was my guitar teachers. You know what I mean? Like when I was learning how to play, that was like I didn't have money for guitar lessons. I'd get my Metallica tape and I'd rewind it and fucking listen and play it and rewind until I got it right.
The next few years were rough. He later recalled living in apartments infested with cockroaches until his mother found a job in Iowa and they moved to Des Moines. The move would eventually change Paul's life, but first he had to solve an immediate problem: finding some friends. One day, he overheard some guys in a local music store saying they needed a bassist for a band that covered Metallica. Paul played guitar, not bass, but he knew the songs and desperately needed friends, so he told them he could do it. He showed up to rehearsal, figured out how to play bass, and somehow it worked. The band was called Vex, and its drummer was Anders Kulsefny, who would later become Slipknot's first singer. Paul had faked his way into a cover band looking for friends, but accidentally started meeting the people who would eventually change metal. Des Moines did not have an endless supply of metal musicians, so the same group of guys were repeatedly forming new projects together. Some of these people would eventually become part of Slipknot. For example, Paul, Anders, Mick Thompson, and Donnie Steele played in a band called Body Pit. But Paul and Joey Jordison also played in a project called Anal Blast. And Sean Crahan and Jim Root were active in a bunch of other local groups. Anders remembered Paul as one of the most social people in the scene. After finishing his shift at a gas station, he would head to rehearsal and bring drinks for everyone, even though he barely earned enough for himself.
The nicest dude I've ever met. sweet, heartfelt, loving.
Around 1992, Colsefni and Crahan started a percussion-heavy metal project that went nowhere. Then, in 1995, they tried again, but this time they added Paul, Steele, Josh, Brainerd, and Jordison. They called the project Meld, but Joey soon suggested a better name, Slipknot, after one of their original songs. At this point, the project was still one of many projects they had been on where members came and went and there was no clear future path ahead. And then randomly one day, Shawn began wearing a clown mask.
When it started out, it was just kind of a weird thing, you know. It started out with Shawn, like he had that clown mask and he wore it at practice one day, and it just was fucking creepy, you know. Like the whole time he wouldn't take it off. We're like, dude, you're fucking, you know, you can't tell what he's looking, you know, what he's thinking, or like if he's smiling or what the fuck. It's just always like this fucking thing. It just freaked us out at practice. We're like, it's awesome, you know. We went on from there, and it was kind of cool too. Back in the, you know, like 'cause back in the day, you could do a show. We would do shows and we'd come back in without the mask. People wouldn't even know, you know, we're in the band. Right. Tell us if we sucked or not. You know, we'd get honest answers. You know, oh, that band fucking ruled, or that band was the worst band I've ever seen. Right. And then you know, they would have no idea they were telling us that. You know, it's kind of cool.
In 1996, they released their first demo, Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. It took months to finish and none of them could really afford it. Shawn reportedly covered much of the bill with credit cards, while the others threw in whatever pocket money they had.
We weren't writing anything to be on the radio. If we were, you know, that happened after Corey got in the band. But when we started, we weren't intending to be on the radio. We were just intending to do what we could with who we had and whatever we felt like we wanted to do at the moment. So we were just kind of pretty much just rushing around doing whatever, coming up with whatever we would normally come up with. And being that we had some of the best musicians around that were in the band, it made it a hell of a lot easier to come up with some creative stuff, because, you know, the ones that are more motivated to keep doing everything no matter what around them is causing them grief are the ones that are the best innovators when it comes to music, and so far that I've seen. So
the record made Slipknot a serious local attraction, but the band also felt limited by Anders' death metal growl and wanted a singer who could handle melodies as well as screams. Their attention turned to Corey Taylor, the frontman of Stone Sour, another prominent band in Des Moines. So, according to Colsefni, the band approached Corey behind his back and had him record over his vocals. Then eventually they told him Slipknot had found a new singer. Colsefni tried to stay in the band as a percussionist, but eventually he just couldn't be happy with the demotion and quit.
And this is, did you ever have any regrets leaving the band? Well, of course. I'd be a lot wealthier and I'd be having a lot of fun right now, maybe, or maybe not. So right now I have no regrets. Back then, yeah, a little bit. It was hard to take for a while, but got over it like everything else, you know. Next question.
It was a brutal way to push aside someone who had helped create the band, but it also established something about Slipknot very early. If the group believed a change was necessary to move forward, personal loyalty would not stop it. Meanwhile, as the band kept grinding, Paul bounced between regular jobs to pay the bills.
I was still in Slipknot, but I was doing concrete, you know. I was pouring driveways and shit, and
Cleaning or something.
Yeah, and you know, just pouring driveways. Seriously, like doing concrete, like fucking finishing concrete, and then going to band practice after work, you know, all tired and dirty, and waiting for what hopefully one day, you know, maybe we get a chance to do something like this, and now we do, and I can't fucking believe it.
In early 1998, Ross Robinson traveled to Des Moines to see Slipknot for himself. Robinson was the producer behind Korn's first 2 albums, so he already knew how to turn an unconventional metal band into something successful. I mean, the guy is literally considered the original creator of nu metal. Anyway, after watching Slipknot perform, he decided to work with them and produce their debut album. I've already made a video about the album itself, so I'll move quickly through this part and keep the focus on Paul. The important thing is that after the album dropped, the response was immediate. Crahan called it the best metal debut of the year and compared its impact to Korn's first album. And Paul was one of the most important creative forces behind it.
I actually write a lot of the Slipknot riffs, believe it or not. Okay. A lot of the guitar riffs are, believe it or not, written by the bass player.
The dude was the genius, you know, he was the main riff writer. And that unique thing, like a riff would come out of him because he's left-handed. It was just something different and bizarre and like quirky. Like there was a quirk that was only unique to him.
Initially, Paul had lied about playing bass because he needed friends, but then he found himself helping to assemble Slipknot piece by piece. Now those pieces had finally locked together, and the band was about to become bigger than any of them could have imagined. By the end of 1999, Slipknot had made it. Their album was selling like crazy, and after years playing clubs around Des Moines, they were touring the world and being treated like the second coming of Jesus in heavy music.
This song is for you. It's your new national fucking anthem. The song is called Surfacing!
The masks made them instantly recognizable, and yes, they were partly a gimmick, and the idea clearly owed something to Mr. Bungle. But a gimmick can only get people to look, while Slipknot's music actually had something to say. Anyway, after touring like slaves through 1999 and 2000, the band was exhausted and most members wanted a break, but not Paul and Joey, who immediately began writing new material. They became the main songwriting duo, creating riffs and developing songs before the rest of the band got together in a studio to refine them. If the first album had been assembled from years of accumulated ideas, the second was being written under a completely different condition. Now, millions of fans were waiting for what Slipknot would do next. Slipknot entered the studio with Ross Robinson in early 2001. And as I just said, Paul and Joey had already written much of the album's foundation, but once the full band arrived, it became clear that 2 years of touring together had left everyone exhausted. Money and ego had also entered the picture. The first album had been made when they had nothing to lose. Now they had a successful career to protect, millions of fans waiting, and less room to fuck things up. Robinson had fractured his spine in a motocross accident shortly before recording began, so he was producing the album in constant pain while heavily medicated with Vicodin.
everything I did, I have kind of no memory of that whole year.
Really?
Yeah, it was that. So I broke my back during Slipknot, and then pained and don't remember making Iowa because the pain was so ruthless. I remember snippets, but not like, the whole. And then
alcohol and drugs made an already tense situation worse. Put it all together, and the atmosphere inside the studio was shit. Everyone was drunk or on some drug, totally stressed out by the pressure of expectations and increasingly hostile toward one another. But they still pushed themselves to the limit. The guitars became denser, the drumming more violent. Corey's screams sounded like a monster, and the entire album took on a bleak, oppressive atmosphere. I've already made another video about how violent the recording sessions were, so you can watch that later if you want the full story. For now, let's stay with Paul. His bass was a crucial part of Iowa's sound, even if it can be difficult to hear beneath the wall of noise created by the guitars and percussion. The title track shows exactly what he contributed. For almost 15 minutes, the track revolves around a dark repeating bass line while layers of noise slowly build around it. Paul is literally the one holding the song together.
You press play, it comes through, and he's completely there.
Yeah.
100%. Forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's living, it's inspiring, it's loving, it's giving, it's creative, it's pulsing, it's got a heartbeat, it's beautiful, it's ugly, it's imperfect, it's perfect. Like all of it, all of it, all of it. And it'll drop you to your fucking knees.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it. We captured it. All the way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the album was released, it reached #1 in the UK and went platinum in the United States less than 2 months later. Slipknot had followed its breakthrough with an harsher and less commercial album, but somehow it made them an even bigger cultural phenomenon. But the recording had left everyone emotionally drained, and almost immediately they were sent back on the road. The schedule was brutal, alcohol and drugs were everywhere, and the dysfunctionality was becoming part of their everyday lives.
And it's that thing, the filter, confusion, fame, stuff happening for you, seemingly for you, and it's just like all of a sudden, I heard this thing, like if you look at your friends around you that you have right now, you're looking at your future.
Yeah.
And his future wasn't too pretty when they were on the road,
Yeah.
They were rough people, and that's not who he was.
Yeah.
It's just addiction it's something else.
For a while, it was easy to ignore the damage because they kept getting bigger, but when the Iowa tour ended and everything stopped, everybody was largely sick of one another. So Corey Taylor returned to Stone Sour for a while Jordison formed Murder Dolls, and Shawn Crahan started To My Surprise. These side projects gave them some much-needed distance from Slipknot and offered them a softer creative environment. Paul reacted differently. More than anything, he wanted Slipknot to start making its next album, and later admitted that he resented the others for moving on to side projects. Slipknot was not just his job, it was the thing that had lifted him out of poverty and gave his life purpose and direction. He played a little bit with the stoner rock band Unida and jammed with friends, but never found a serious musical outlet outside Slipknot. And without the band and its constant schedule to keep him occupied, he began slipping further into addiction. Paul later admitted that he was taking pills and injecting heroin every day. Then, on June 1st, 2003, his private addiction became public when Paul ran a red light and crashed his Porsche into another car. Thankfully, nobody was seriously injured. When police arrived, however, Paul was slurring, struggling to keep his balance and barely staying awake. Officers found drugs and syringes inside the car and ultimately arrested him. The incident was a big red flag, and things could have gone a lot worse. This wasn't a rock star getting drunk backstage and destroying a hotel room. Paul had driven into another vehicle while under the influence, but luckily nobody was seriously injured. After the arrest, he pleaded guilty and received 1 year of informal probation. Shortly after, the band got together to work on a new album with producer Rick Rubin at the Houdini Mansion, a location that came with plenty of stories about hauntings and paranormal activity. And yet, the real problem inside the house was considerably less supernatural. The band was disconnected and members barely spoke to one another. Corey later said Stone Sour had reminded him what it felt like to be in a less hostile band, and the idea of returning to Slipknot made him almost nauseous. Anyway, once again, Paul and Joey found themselves pushing the creative effort. One of the first songs they wrote for the album was Vermilion, built around a tense melodic idea that showed where Slipknot could go if they didn't try to reproduce Iowa. That became the larger purpose of this new album. The first one introduced the band, the second pushed their sound toward its most extreme version. But the third one widened the frame. Acoustic guitars appeared and Corey sang more, and songs like Vermilion that I just mentioned or Circle created space that would have seemed almost impossible on Iowa. For Paul, this evolution fit the musician he had always been. Slipknot required him to find room inside music already crowded with drums, percussions, samples, and 2 guitars. But if you truly paid attention to records, his bass had always depended on understanding groove as much as heaviness.
It's very important that everybody on the outside of us understands that Paul Gray was the essence of the band Slipknot.
Once released, the album reached number 2 in the United States and eventually went platinum. And Before I Forget would win Slipknot their first Grammy, giving the band an industry recognition that would have seemed absurd during the years when Paul was working dead-end jobs to pay the bills.
I never knew what being a rock star would be like. I still don't know. I mean, I don't really consider myself a rock star, but obviously I guess I am. I don't know. And I still do the same shit, man. I go to the same fucking bar, hang out with the same fucking people. You know what I mean? So it really hasn't changed that much. I mean, except for now I can afford drinks. I can buy a few people drinks instead of having to bum money every night.
What the public did not know was that Paul would often disappear during recording sessions to use drugs or pass out in the studio. Eventually, however, before the album was even finished, he entered rehab. And for a while it worked, and he kept his addiction in check. But once Slipknot returned to the road, so did Paul's old habits. Near the end of the band's arena tour with Lamb of God and Shadows Fall, he missed the final 6 shows because he had to check himself into rehab.
Yeah, I mean, he'd fought addiction for a very long time.
It created a tragic contradiction. Slipknot was becoming more successful and secure, while Paul was cycling between drugs, rehab, and relapse. Eventually, the person who seems to have made the biggest difference was Brenna, the woman who would become his wife. Brenna told Paul she could not keep watching him kill himself. At the time, he was living in Los Angeles, where he said drugs were everywhere and staying clean was pretty much impossible. So they moved back to Iowa together, where they found a doctor who helped him get sober. When the band began recording All Hope Is Gone in Iowa with producer Dave Fortman, Paul still had plenty of ideas. He and Joey had continued writing together as usual, and several of their songs made it onto the album. Joey later remembered watching Paul build Gehenna almost entirely by himself and deciding not to interfere because the song felt so personal to him. Psychosocial, one of Slipknot's biggest singles, also grew from material Paul and Joey brought into the studio. Even the title track reworked some riffs Paul had written before Slipknot even existed, showing just how long he could carry an idea before finally finding the right place for it. Still, the recording sessions were far from harmonious. The members had different ideas about what Slipknot should become. And while the main album was being recorded, Shawn, Corey, Jim, and Sid began experimenting with a separate group of atmospheric songs that would eventually become Look Outside Your Window. Slipknot could still make a successful record, but the 9 members were now operating as they belonged to completely different bands. Still, once released, the album gave Slipknot something they had never achieved before: a #1 spot in the United States. After nearly a decade, at the highest level of metal, they were somehow still getting bigger. For Paul, there were other reasons for optimism too. He and Brenna were now married. He had been sober long enough to speak about addiction as something he had survived rather than something actively controlling him. The band toured heavily from the summer of 2008 through 2009, but tours always end. And when this one did, Paul once again lost the thing that gave his life its strongest structure.
A couple weeks before he died, he called me up, and I was driving on Washington Boulevard by Taco Bell Thai, up in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm driving on," and I told him where I was for some reason. He goes, "Oh, my grandmother just died, and that's where she lived when I was a kid." I'm like, "Dude, she's right now telling you that she loves you." He's like, he started sobbing on the phone. He's like, "Yes." Because it's impossible for you to call and me not know and give you my location. And, my God, he was just like, oh. And then he goes, I'm having a baby.
Whoa.
I'm like, oh my God, and that was our relationship. It was all about love and support.
Shortly before Christmas 2009, Brenna became pregnant. She later said she had never seen Paul happier. He had also finally found something to keep him busy whenever Slipknot stopped. In April 2010, Paul joined Hail, a metal supergroup featuring Tim Owens and Sepultura guitarist Andreas Kisser. He was replacing bassist David Ellefson, who had recently returned to Megadeth, and sounded genuinely excited about touring with them. From the outside, Paul appeared to be entering a happier, more stable period of his life. What no one knew was that his addiction had returned. In May, while Paul was preparing to tour Europe with Hail, Brenna found evidence of drug use at home. Paul assured her he would seek treatment after the tour, but she refused to wait and in an attempt to save his life, had him cancel the trip. That night, Paul left home and checked into a hotel.
Just within the last few hours, we've confirmed that the bassist for the band Slipknot has died.
He was found dead in an Urbandale motel.
The morning after, an employee entered his room and found him laying on the ground unresponsive, so he called the police.
And what room did you say?
Room 431.
431? Are you with him now?
Yes.
Do you know about how old he is? 50s, 60s, 70s?
Oh no, probably mid-20s.
20s?
Mm-hmm. There's a hypodermic needle next to his bed here, so.
Okay, so he's not awake?
Oh God, no. He's all purple.
He's not breathing? He look like he's been there a while?
Yeah, well, like I said, his hands and legs are all purple.
Okay, so is he cold and stiff?
I'm not touching him.
Not touching him? Okay.
No.
When paramedics arrived on the scene on the morning of May 24th, 2010, they declared him dead.
He was found dead in an Urbandale motel room. News Channel 8's Amanda Lewis has the details. Amanda.
Well, they've been circulating rumors all day about 38-year-old Paul Gray, and now we're learning that those rumors are true. Urbandale police say employees of the Town Place Suites at 8800 North Park Drive found Gray in a hotel room this morning. In this video, you can see the
Police found no evidence of foul play.
Absolutely, there was no indication of any foul play, and I will say that. But until we get more information from the autopsy, we'll stop at that point.
The day after, Slipknot did something they had never done in public before. They took off their masks and held a special press conference.
Yesterday we lost our brother. And the world seems a little smaller because of it. He had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. And he had the greatest soul I've ever had the privilege to know. He was everything that was wonderful about this band and about this group of people. The only way I can sum up Paul Gray is love. Everything he did for everyone around him, whether he knew you or not. And that's what he's left behind for us, is absolute love. I will miss him with every fiber of my heart, as will everybody at this table and everyone who knew him. He was the best of us. We miss you, Paul. We miss you very much.
It was a beautiful description of someone who publicly had rarely been treated as the center of the band. Corey was the voice. Joey was one of its most recognizable musicians. Shawn had built much of Slipknot's visual identity. And Paul had always seemed easier to overlook. But the reaction to his death exposed the difference between visibility and importance. He had written with Joey between album cycles, brought riffs into rehearsals, helped arrange songs, and just as importantly was the main fan of Slipknot, always pushing for the band to get back together and write more material.
That I miss my brother so much. This is very hard for me right now. I just want to say that I love you, Paul, very much. You'll be sorely missed by the world over. God bless you, and thank you for all the great times that we had together. I love you so much.
Eventually, the autopsy concluded Paul had died from an accidental overdose of morphine and fentanyl, and also found significant heart disease, which had contributed to the danger his body was already under. The circumstances became more painful because his daughter was born later that year. Paul had spent the final months of his life excited about becoming a father, but he never got to meet his daughter.
Paul is my husband, an amazing person, and I just want people to remember him for just that. And his daughter will remember him for the way he was. And I just thank everybody for being here.
At his funeral, I was like, they were done speaking and they started lowering his casket, and I started clapping and applause for how beautiful he was, and everybody started clapping too. I remember Clown turning around and looking at me like I was a fucking freak.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just beautiful.
Wow.
The boy was beautiful.
That loss became the subject of the next Slipknot record. The gray chapter was not subtle about whom it was named after.
Do you dedicate the album to him?
Yeah.
How did his death affect the group?
It was very dark. It was very, very heavy. The day we found out, we were all sitting in my house, and the only thing I can describe it is like this dense numbness that kind of descended on us.
19 opened the album like a funeral. Skeptic addressed Paul directly. Goodbye grew from Corey's memory of sitting stunned in his house shortly after learning that Paul had died. Instead of disguising the loss behind Slipknot's usual imagery, the band made an album about grief, guilt, anger, and the strange practical problem of continuing your life when someone who was supposed to be part of it is suddenly gone. Alessandro Venturella, a British bassist who had previously worked as a guitar technician, eventually became the band's new bassist. But while Slipknot had found another bass player, they had not found another Paul Gray. And while the band was learning to move forward, another version of Paul's story was unfolding in an Iowa courtroom. The focus was Dr. Daniel Baldi, a physician who had treated Paul before his death. Prosecutors accused Baldi of recklessly prescribing powerful medications to patients who were already vulnerable to addiction, and Paul's death became one of several cases presented at his criminal trial.
This afternoon, on day 7 of the manslaughter trial of Dr. Daniel Baldi, the wife of the most famous of the 9 alleged victims took the stand to testify for the state against the doctor she says recklessly contributed to her husband's death in part by overprescribing Xanax.
The prosecution attempted to establish that Baldi's prescribing practices had contributed to the deaths of Paul and other patients.
I just knew it was a drug of his choice that he had struggled with in the past. So I just wasn't very sure why he was on it, prescribed it.
Brenna Gray says she attended her husband's appointments with Dr.
On May 1st, 2014, the jury acquitted Baldi of all the involuntary manslaughter charges he faced. Jurors concluded that prosecutors had not proven the level of recklessness necessary for a criminal conviction. Still, Brenna filed a separate claim to keep fighting and eventually reached a settlement with Baldi. The terms were not made public. Slipknot had spent years presenting itself as a brotherhood, but internally, those relationships could be competitive, angry, and stubborn. Paul was often the glue keeping them together, and the further Slipknot continued without him, the easier it became to see how fundamental Paul actually was. He was there when there was no audience. He was there before the band was even called Slipknot and before Corey Taylor joined. He was there before the debut album and before they became rich and famous. He helped carry music from one project into another and remained one of the people most committed to Slipknot whenever the other members wanted distance from it. For years, he had stood slightly outside the spotlight while louder personalities defined what Slipknot looked and sounded like to the public. Yet when those people were suddenly asked to explain who Paul had been, they did not describe him as the bass player. Instead, they described him with gratitude as the main reason they were there.
None of us would be on the path that we're on right now in life, or have the sorts of lives that we have without him. And as Corey said, he really was the essence of Slipknot, and we would like to have him remembered that way.
It's not dirt, it's dust. Dust is worse than dirt is better than dust. Dude, do you have any beers?
No, I do not. I bummed this one.
All right. For now. Yo, that's just back.